Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. The first stop today, this evening, is at a jazz cafe. It's called the Duc de Lombards. It is 1998, and this is called Promises Made at Lombards. That haunting, that dance. We brushed soft shoe against hard surface. A pre-millennium stream of slow smoke. Jazz notes under low lights down at Lombards with its wine by the bottle, so that we swayed to those notes too complicated to catch hold of. We were saxophones, playing pink elephants between the Duke's darkness and the white lights of the blinding dawn. Prisoners to the poison. We stepped across that floor already haunted, devouring desire before it was kissed by the ghost we'd promised to each other not to shake. Bonsoir et merci à tous et bienvenue. This is 8 Enough? Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us here. My name is Damien B. Donnelly, and my sparkling, fantastic, amazing tiara-wearing partner here tonight is Gaynor Kane. She is the author of Circling the Sun, Memory Forest, penned in with Karen Mooney, Venus in Pink Marble, and released just this year from the Hedgehog Poetry Press, her new pamphlet, 8 Types of Love, from which she is going to share some of those tales with us this evening. Now about Gaynor. Gaynor is the toast of Belfast. She is my northern light, always in need of a deadline, just in case you ever ask her to do something for you, never far from a hug or a very, very large glass of gin, which actually looks like a large goldfish bowl, and never short on giving her heart, her soul, and sometimes even her vocal stylings to those close to her. Her Venus has fallen down more times than either of us, but as we have all learned, it is all about the climb back up. Now, this year, she was the ignition to my engine on the inaugural issue of The Storms, our new journal of poetry, prose, and visual arts, and I could not have asked for a better sub-editor and a greater friend. Thank you, Gaynor, for being with us this evening. Love you.
Oh, I love you too. Thank you so much, Damien. That's a lovely introduction. And thank you for doing tonight with me. It's great for the two of us to do this. But hello to everyone, and thanks for coming along tonight. Now, I am going to start off with a poem that isn't in 8 Types of Love, but it was recently longlisted in the Frosted Fire single poem competition, and it's about the first Dubliner that I fell in love with, because Damien is the third and he's the second, called Damien. But this poem is about Robbie. And the only thing that might not translate is a press is an airing cupboard. Robbie, what a smiler, eyes bright as borage, with crow's feet, freckles, dimples, a chin as square as a press, a chiselled dresser, his voice, hand-churned butter, melting into Irish soda bread, with hair the colour of Guinness. I drank him up until we were both full and chest to chest in a single bed. Now, we wouldn't be here tonight if it weren't for the Hedgehog Poetry Press, as Damien's already mentioned. It's not only the publisher of our recent books, but it's also how Damien and I first became friends 2 years ago. It seems like much longer. We were preparing for the release of books That time it was the opposite way around, as it was my first full collection, and Damien's debut pamphlet, Eat the Storms. Eat the Storms! I asked him to help me do a launch online because of the pandemic, and he generously agreed to that. And we immediately hit it off. It felt like we'd been teasing each other forever. Without consulting on clothing, we arrived in the Zoom room in matching pink check and have been the best of friends ever since. He feeds my body and soul with his kindness and cake. Earlier, he said I was the ignition to his engine for the first Storms journal, but I think it was more to do with me knowing how to push his buttons. Damien B. Donnelly needs no introduction because he is to the poetry community what Jean-Paul Gaultier is to fashion. He's our very own red carpet runway writer.
I've always wanted to be Jean-Paul Gaultier. That's why I moved to Paris. Then, of course, I realized that I had never studied French. I didn't know a single person and I had nowhere to live. So I ended up working in an Irish bar. But, you know, you can never plan what happens. But I am very grateful that the unplanned meeting between myself and Gaynor actually took place. And here we are today, 25 years later, not just 2 years later. So I'm going to start with a poem that's in the opening section of Enough. The collection is split into 6 sections. But today we are exploring types of love. So the first poem that I'm going to read is about Ludoslav. So it's about youth and innocence. This poem is called Trois couleurs et moi, or Three Colors and Me, and it was inspired by a film called Trois couleurs bleues by Krzysztof Kieślowski, and it starred a woman called Juliette Binoche. And when I was 19, I saw this for the first time. And 3 years later, when I moved to Paris, I ended up living in the same arrondissement that Juliette Binoche lived in the movie. And this has stayed with me forever, basically. It was my first introduction to French life, the simplicity of French cinema. Trois couleurs et moi. I was growing out of green when I saw you first in Dublin. Watching you brush bare knuckle across a cinematic screen. You, sipping coffee in a corner cafe, courting violin blues on a street not yet mine, and me, still trying to come out, to put away childish things, trainers, retainers, dressing up as cowboys and wondering why the Indians wanted to survive. Stretching out over the vast array of nothing. In chaps, someone somewhere once thought were suitable for a kid. Still empty. Still trying to fill in bare spaces on pants. Prints, persons, noticeable for nothing, rien, comme tu m'avais dit. From that big screen in a cinema where no one ate popcorn. You, looking for an apartment in the 5th where I later came to sleep, shit, smoke, slip, to bash my own knuckles against banal and back again. To seduce ideas of being a somebody, having already left everybody. Even the concerning costumes and those 3 colors that had started out with you back when I was green, though only in part, and coveting Julie. Perhaps a prophecy for the coming of the blue. Sometimes the endings are there to be seen right at the very beginning. So the second one, also in the same section of Ludoslav, about youth and innocence, was those early days of connecting, fucking. The one thing that I'll mention, because it's quite a straightforward poem before I read it, is that the Légion d'honneur is a medal that the French government give out. It's the highest honor that you can get from France. They haven't given it to me yet. This is called Three Boys and a Girl. 3 boys and a girl, diving from teens into 20s at the end of the 90s, wearing hangovers like the Légion d'honneur, hot under summer's press and last night's sweat still sweet. She laughs, he blushes, and we fuck. The naked imprint for days against the glass. Reflections of cuts yet to be made. Some things are only meant for the moon, like stars and darkness and emptiness and his lips. 3 boys and a girl in a summer's park. One fair, one dark, and the flippant I'd recently flipped off and over. Now stuck like sweaty patches under arms you can't avoid looking at, sniffing, wondering how long they'll take to dry off, sitting, sweating, smiling, lusting at large in a perfect park in the heat of his sweat, her smile and those eyes. Burning ourselves with the first tastes of desire. Thank you very much. Over to you, Gaynor.
Yes, staying with the playful love theme. When Michael and I were in our early 20s, we built a house, and while doing so, we lived on the building site in a caravan. And I was very shy about the thought of reading this poem, but Mooney bullied me into it last Monday at the Secret Bookshelf. So it's already had an urn and it survived it. And I'm going to share the embarrassment with you tonight. Caravan of Love. Our caravan wasn't always static. It often shook, even when there wasn't a storm brewing. Parked up on breeze blocks behind the retired neighbour's bungalow, their kitchen window framed inside our big gable pane. We made heat all year, but in the winter, the 3-bar gas fire was essential. And when the gas bottle froze, he'd shake it and bring it indoors. One summer's night, I undressed, pausing halfway to belly dance, my top whipped off to reveal a coinless bra and full skirt lowered to my hips. I dirty danced with spaghetti arms, rotating and gyrating my hips, shimmying my shoulders, jiggling my breasts. I turned my back on my love to wiggle my bum. And there was Malky next door at his kitchen sink, staring right at me. Well, I flung myself onto the brown carpet, roaring with laughter. Michael joined me there, giggling, and our caravan quaked and quivered. I won't tell you about the night the bed leg went right through the floor. Oh, the things you get up to when you're young and you can actually move. Now for something a wee bit more romantic. This is Alone and Adrift. Fist unfurled, she stares at the future on her palm, traces the arc of her lifeline, picks out grit from under her nails, sees writing in the rough skin, rubbing finger to thumb, she hears long dune grass rustle, webbed folds and wrinkled knuckles become gentle ripples on a moonlit ocean, whirlpools in the whirls of her fingerprints. Lununa, I'm going to start that verse again. Vanilla on thumbnail, a little moon to navigate by, to find a radius to her ulna, to feel the warmth of another's hand, cupped and stroking her cheek, a lightness of touch, as sensuous as a sea breeze. Thank you. Back to you, DBD.
Can we just have a moment? I know we're not going to do this all the time, but maybe just a quick moment to come off mute and give Gaynor Kane, and especially her Britney Spears moves, some congrats.
Go girl.
Moving along, this is now time for topophilia. So perhaps pronounced a little strangely, but this is all about love of place. Those of you who've actually been to Paris will probably, especially if you've taken the metro anywhere, will probably recognize very quickly what I'm talking about in the opening few lines. So this is called Le Parfum de la Jeunesse, so the perfume of the youth. Walkways of dog shit and metros that open into underground pathways of piss. Narrow stairwells of nicotine knotted railings and those crossened crumbs squashed into cornered crevices. Two-legged dogs on tiptoes licking at large while their put-bill four-legged fancies in diamond chokers hump deserted scooters in the middle paths of main streets, and yet we come like cattle into the chaos, munching our way from the farms of everywhere else to the stench of what we have now come to identify as cult. Conditioned in cold canisters, 19 square meters and shit squatting in posh toilets with paper towels that can tear through any crack. Concrete does not have a lasting scent. It doesn't even rot. So we paint it with dimensions it can never contain, like the yellow brick road. Once diversions from witches that were never really wretched. The second poem, Love of Place, is all about one of my favorite places, my favorite outdoor spaces in Paris, and that was the Jardin d'Auxerre d'Auteuil. It is a fantastic, beautiful, exceptional 1800s botanical gardens to the west of Paris. It is surrounded by the Roland Garros, and every year the Roland Garros nets come in tighter and tighter to try and choke what is left behind of these exceptional piece of natural beauty. So this is called Better Than. It's inspired by the Jardin d'Auxerre and also by a poem by Leonard Cohen. Better than huge genitalia is something I can cup comfortably in the palm of my hand. I cannot spend all day riding the tower Eiffel left us. Hard and cold like a corpse, and often in the evening, ambivalent to competing stars it tries to squash with the slim prick of its furthest reaching point. Better is the slow undress of buds into begonia, under glass of heated house, whose reflection catches all falling stars to the west of all that is no longer the center of anything other than history. Next door to where they hit brightly colored balls back and forth all day long. Over to you, Gaynor.
So, love of place. I am going to stay there. And this poem is about the second home that Michael and I shared as a couple. Whilst living in the shaky caravan, which I introduced you to a moment ago, we built a bungalow. We had help from brickies and plumbers and sparks who did a lot of the technique, or the things that you don't want to do yourself, and we did all the labouring, like pouring cement into subfloors. And it was in a little village called Kirkcudbright, on the Ards Peninsula, which is on the edge of Strangford Lough, and that has been designated as an area of outstanding natural beauty. We called our bungalow after the place where our first little house was in Belfast, which was on Ardnalea Street. So the bungalow is called Ardnalea. And so is this poem, funny enough. Ardnalea. This house has writing in its foundations. Do you remember how we buried bronze and silver coins in the threshold, and how, just before concrete set, we scribed our monograms inside a heart? A few from every aspect. Through the dining room window, there are coconut-scented winds. Thorny canopy, the perfect hide for a rabbit warren. Over morning coffee at the kitchen table, we snare the hare in our sights, sitting proud in the middle of a stubble field, softened by dawn mist and a smattering of dewy cobwebs. At evening high tide, we glimpse the sun-sparkled loch, perhaps a triangular sail or two floating past, as we sit on the sofa, me safely harboured in the curve of your arm.
From the curve of your arm to scrambled eggs next, as we turn to philia, or platonic love. In the younger days, sometimes even in the older days, we have flatmates. Sometimes it's your mother when you're 47 and you had no idea that you were going to end up living away for 23 years and coming back to a tiny cottage in the middle of nowhere, living with your mother thanks to COVID. But there you are. At other times when you are 22, you end up being kicked out of the Irish college that you were living in because they closed for Christmas and you had nowhere else to go. The apartment that you were given was given away to somebody else on Christmas Eve. You literally felt like Mary with no room in the inn on Christmas Eve, and ended up living in a hotel for 3 weeks, and then finally found a flatmate which you thought was going to be forever, and she turned out to be completely and utterly crazy. So this is called Scrambled Eggs, or Ouf Brûlé. You used to bash thick heel of stilettoed shoe against thin frame of metal water heater, mounted over clogged sink in the pinched corner of kitchen at 6 a.m., less than 6 feet from where I slept, and I leapt every time, like someone had smashed an egg into the side of my skull. I cannot remember how we made our way into that apartment, how many stairs we took before we turned in, or where the key was placed in frame of door, since sealed shut. Now, a million steps from a door frame that had shifted from focus. I wake with the taste of yolk on my lips, and the echo of all that has since smashed. And I wonder of the tiny little pieces you'd have to paste together to bring me back to the sight of you with shoe in hand. Later on, with another friend, little less insane. She didn't hit the water boiler over my head every morning. We used to hang out at a restaurant, an American restaurant in Paris called Le Capole. It was made famous by Hemingway, Samuel Beckett. And this was a place where we'd go to on Sundays, full of very fancy, coiffed French people. And we'd imagine how it would feel, what people would think if they later came looking for us in these places. This is called 98 Boulevard du Montparnasse, 98 Boulevard du Montparnasse. We met often on Sundays. Too old for Le Capole, though nostalgic enough occasionally for a slow seat at Le Select. Wondering if it was Hemingway or our very own Beckett who'd left the Brawley on the stand. An unclaimed link to a time now meandered into myth like we were. At times together, apart, same road but different direction, coming in to catch up over cuisine as traditional as the easy step of their formal waiter who oozed professional, but who held friendly for others after. We sipped on selected Sundays quelques coupes de champagne, amid the outdated gentry with coifs and curled moustaches and curious cologne, sitting next to history hunters who wondered where Picasso sat and was the light right on their profile just in case. We too came in curious, with odd colors and chords we'd been curating in our sketchbooks. Curious as to whether someday someone would wonder where we sat, would wonder if we were the owners of all those Brawleys they wanted to grab hold of in the hope they'd feel the weight of purpose. We ate often on Sundays, always sandwiched in between the heavy courses of foie gras and coulis d'agneau, and sipped champagne while we served each other accounts of our own liaisons and watched to see if one aroused the demand of a dessert. Bing! Back to you.
So we're staying in a restaurant now, and I know people love to hear the background to poems, and this is a sad poem which I've never read before, and it's a night where I brought in the new year that was 2020, with a friend who had lost her sister that year, who was also in our friendship group. But I wanted to share it tonight, and I hope I make it through it. So it's dedicated to my friend PJ and to her sister T-Bone, and it's bringing in the roaring 2020s. Oh, and yeah, when I shared the manuscript before it went off to print, it's funny, you know, you make all these decisions about editing, and a good friend who's in the room here and wearing a stripy top and talking a lot of French said, you know, that poem doesn't start until the 5th verse. But I considered that and have left the wealth of decorations in because I believe the contrast was important. So who knows whether it works or whether you'll be bored by the fourth verse. But if you just stay with me, the poem actually begins in the 5th verse. It's bringing in the roaring 2020s. Black bunting in Belfast Snail's Hill, New Year's Eve in Art Deco font above the bar, waiters in black and white, braces and pinstripes, fedoras and trilbies, a crystal bowl of ostrich feathers on a lacquered sideboard, ceiling decorations of pleated stars and fans, gold, black, and silver helium balloons with long ribbon ringlets. On the tables, strings of white pearls, plastic Panamas, elastic headbands, and dangling diamantes. Lots and lots of selfie props, little plush hats on sticks, crowns, pointed glasses, glitter beards and moustaches. Our pale, sad faces reflected in the wall of windows, and I think of the two endangered axolotls in the aquarium. Walking fishes with insipid, freckled faces, feathered gills, and blank, wide smiles, ambling around in circles in a fish tank. And here we are on the cusp of a year-end, new year, on the crest of a decade, surrounded by decadence, in the crevasse of her loss. But there is no empty chair, unless we count the bench at the end of the table where your father sits alone, putting on a cardboard masquerade mask and looking like a mannequin pulled straight out of Burton's window. You, our friend, tried to fill the hole by inviting the six of us to join your family, a break from tradition, and while our bodies and personalities are oversized, it is not enough, for there will never be anyone or anything that will replace your sister. Through the final moments of 2019, we move places as if playing musical chairs to talk to your parents, her husband, his folks, and you, our friend. And you are two-faced like Janice, except your looking forward face is contorted like the scream, and your looking back face has a smile that no longer reaches your eyes. We are trapped in a Christmas globe where the snow rages in a cyclone. We dance on tiptoes, grappling for stable ground, and snatch at flitting memories that melt like snowflakes on our cheeks. On New Year's Day, I struggle out of bed with wild hair ruffled. On the landing window, there is the ghost print of a bird. The impact's velocity had thrust every speck of dirt, every grain of sand onto the window pane, leaving the splattered outline, leaving the splattered outline of a fanned tail, plump breast and arched eyebrow-shaped wings. I'm winded, slumped on the stairs, replaying in my mind how last night we had flocked around your mother, admiring the everlasting engraved fingerprint on the silver heart of her new bracelet.
You see, I said at the beginning, she gives her heart and soul to all those close. Thank you, Gaynor. We love you. All right. Back to the poetry, and it feels like the right time to be a little for a little mania. So this is all about mania love, back to Paris. This poem is called Les Catacombes. It's set in the catacombs in Paris. So in the 18th century, the Parisians ran out of spaces to bury their dead, so they dug up the already dead, put them into an underground tunnel so that they'd have room to put the new dead into the spaces where the previously dead originally were, if you get what I mean. So now they are tunnels underground. You enter in Denfert Rochereau in the east of Paris. And this is called Les Catacombes. Gold glitters best under cover. Diamonds only friends after pressure, and how we shone under all that weight. Je t'aime, tu sais. you said, and you did. Light pressure on lips against hips, intoxication licked before the trick, before the chisel came to be the holder of your hand, and the pressure of all that had started out as lies began to pound. They say gold glitters best under cover, and you drowned yourself in it like a teenager, discovering her first passion for perfume and the rest left to choke. I remember the first time, slipping underground, d'enfer dissolving as I went down and you undressed. You always wanted to be naked, to peel back the fabric, sever the skin, burn a light into the void of all things dead. Press it lightly to see if it came back to life. Pressure, not perish. You were never good at letting go, moving on. Downstairs, you whispered je t'aime again, below the light, grinding it down with the hope of uncovering a diamond. So the second slightly manic mania love is set in close to the last place that I lived. So that was the Cimetière Père Lachaise, which is in the 20th arrondissement of Paris. It's very famous for being the final resting place of Edith Piaf, Georges Seurat, Oscar Wilde. I actually lived across the street from where Edith Piaf was supposed to be, myth, born, right by a lamppost. They say that either her mother got stuck on the stairs coming down, didn't get to the hospital in time, had her on the street by the lamppost. We're not quite sure. So this is called Cimetière Père Lachaise. I see you bolting through the boulevards, taller than before, than when I wore you, when we wore each other down into cobbles that now cut. I am returned, could not keep away. Our skin is elastic. It stretches out so far until we forget where we pinned it down. Then comes the recoil. The sun doesn't only burn the closer you come to it. The moon doesn't only control time. Here, heat is stored in concrete, so we are burnt before burial. Here, in this cemetery, the earth is open. They come to listen, to wonder if Edith sings as they leave flowers. Leave her flowers and watch them dying like she was in her day. Single sparrow reaching out for a tune under all that darkness. I live just across from the spot where they think she was born, under a lamplight having fallen out too soon or her mother getting down too late. We are the stuff of myth. We leave you roses, but don't even know if you liked the flower. The shadow has shifted in this peculiar park, where you can't run or drink, but you can take pictures of all that's no longer there. You can leave kisses if you're not caught on the concrete wit of Wilde, on a hill in the 20th arrondissement, to the east of this bereaved city. On a hill rising higher and higher from bones we're crawling over, where I see you at times the shadow of who we were, shifting. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you. I'm going to stay with obsessive love too. And yeah, I think you mentioned the brandy balls earlier. This is from, it's really a short story, but it's poetry because I turned it into a haibun by inserting some haiku. So there's a lot of prose in it, and this section of prose, it's just an extract of Dan the Man Brandy Balls, because it's so long. Dan is a man who has many obsessions, one being the hard candy sweets, which he has become addicted to since he stopped his other addiction, which was smoking. And he's a very unpleasant character who works in a lighthouse. So he's gone to work in the lighthouse, and Susan is sitting at home thinking. She unwrapped another of his precious brandy balls. The dog glanced up to see if it was anything worth begging for, grunted, and put her head back on the hearth. Susan thought back to the beginning of their romance, 22 years ago. Dan had arranged a special treat every month. For their 6th-month anniversary, he had taken her to Paris for the weekend in a boutique hotel with a view of the Eiffel Tower, where he proposed with the ring of a cola can. Everything about their relationship had fizzed. She couldn't look at him without feeling a ripple of electricity course across her body. They got married exactly 1 year from the first day they met. He changed instantly. It began with Dan challenging all her decisions, even things they'd agreed on together, and then it spiraled. She tried to hide all the signs, especially from her parents. She'd thought about leaving, but couldn't for the fear of letting them down. And she knew she'd been wrong when, on his deathbed, her dad had told her to leave Dan and get a divorce. Before he could say any more, Dan had marched back in, slamming the door and shouting that it would have been easier to find a doctor in Aldi. Susan's father passed away 10 minutes later. Then Dan had had a row with her in the hospital car park over a nail brush and their unhygienic nature. So that's just a very short extract from Dan, and buy the book to read the rest. Now I'm going to move away from obsessive love to unconditional love, and finish my set by reading the last poem in the pamphlet, which was inspired by an American poet called Sean Thomas Doherty. He has a poem called Dear Tiara, and this poem is called Dear Tara. I dreamed of you as a sleeping bumble in the yellow bloom of St. John's wort. I dreamed of you as a tiny red feather pirouetting from the bloody breast of the robin. I dreamed of you as a candy floss cloud above a sedge of cranes migrating. I dreamed of you as the mile-long uphill path to Parliament buildings at Stormont. I dreamed of you as a three-toed sloth ruminating on rice leaves. I dreamed of you as the Poker Street slanted side rail of the library's bookshelf ladder. I dreamed of you as phosphine gas held stable within a glass globe at the Ulster Museum. I dreamed of you as a silver gilded skin-thin page of a purple-bound Bible. I dreamed of you as an awful Aztec god, reincarnated as a water dog, salamandering across sandy seabeds. I dreamed of you as a pop art heart in turquoise blue and emerald green. I dreamed of you as oxygen bound to hemoglobin, pumped from my lungs to each and every artery. Thank you. Back to you, DBD.
Dear friends and fantastic poets in the room, can we please give it up for the absolutely incredible Gaynor Kane?
Yay! Brilliant, Gaynor.
Fabulous.
Lovely reading. So long.
Amazing.
Oh, wow. God, that hour has flown by. I haven't even had much time to drink my ginger beer. Okay, so we started off with a haunting of jazz notes, and so I'm going to leave you with a lingering ghost. This is called Key the Magisserie. There's a part of me there, still, with you, below the bridge, by the river, smiling. There's a part of me there, still, with the water rushing, time flowing, by the bridge, drowning. There's a part of you in me still, regardless of time, breath, bridge, regardless of the water I drown in. There's a part of you. There's a part of me still, watching the water, looking for reflections of where we lost our course. Guys, thank you so much for being with us.
Can I just add, sorry, Damien, I'm just going to interrupt you.
No.
Can I ask you all to unmute and give Damien a big round of applause, please?
Brilliant. Fantastic.
Well done, Damien.
Bravo.
Beautiful, both of you.
Thank you so much. My God, that's been quite an emotional evening. It's been fantastic to have you guys in the room and looking out at all your faces. Like, you're all people who we know so well, we all love and adore. So it has felt like, you know, being here, sharing words and tales with family, because that's what you guys have become. Such a fantastic support, such fantastic encouragement, and such fantastic talent from all of you. I feel really privileged. I feel honored to be here with Gaynor, and really honored to be here looking at all of you guys. So thank you so much. It's been a long journey. For me, the Paris journey started when I was 22. So now at 47, finally I get to kind of release it and let it out there. And to get to do that with lots of love. So it was a lovely tie-in to be able to look at the collection and view it through Gaynor's categories and Gaynor's types of love. I thought there was a lot of anger, but I think even in the angry poems, it's full of love for a place that held so much of me, was so much a part of me for so long, and I suppose still is, even though I want to say goodbye, au revoir. But even au revoir means till later, see you again. I'm going to stop talking now, because otherwise I'm just going to keep rambling on. But listen, thank you. We really appreciate it. Gaynor, you are just a star. You are the finest tiara wearing poet that I have ever known. You just bring joy, and you do share that with all of us, from being in the Zoom room, from being in your company, from you trying to crawl into my bed every time you seem to be in place that has a bed. You know, I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Oh, it's just as well I'm on mute.
You're just as
You
bad
want to add
yourself.
something, Karen? Might you have been trying to crawl into bed too?
Karen's worse. Yeah, she's the instigator, I think. Teeny boat in action.
There's many of us in this room who have shared a similar bed.
My only question, Damien, I think you answered. I was just wondering where this collection has brought you in terms of your current relationship with cars, but I think you've kind of resolved that for us.
I think
Or
it's
is there
reminded
anything
me
more
that I loved Amsterdam and lived in Amsterdam a lot longer. So maybe I need to go and visit the 10 years I spent living with the hookers and the hash, and see what comes out of that. You know, now that I've expelled a little bit of Paris. But going back over it, because it feels again like a while since I wrote it. So going back over it, even tonight, you know, you realize it's very emotional. And I thought for a long time that, you know, when I left it, I thought I was done, because I moved there at 22, left before I was 25, and then moved back when I was 40, because I thought that's where I was meant to be. That's where I was meant to go and live and die. Then I got back there and I realized that most people were really rude and hard and cold, and that wasn't quite me. Yeah, the concrete began to cut. But it's like everything, you know, when you come away from it and you look back at it from a distance, hopefully what you let go of are those cuts. And you keep the softer tattoos, you know, that sort of blended in, change the color of your skin slightly. It's always going to be a part of me. It's never really going to be goodbye completely. Fini. Enough just for now. Ça suffit pour le moment.